you've seen the video, or print it out and then watch the video and then go through the study with me. Either way is good for me. Whatever's good for you. So let's get started. Here we have, so Matthew chapter 1, just a couple of introduction pieces on this that I've gathered. I use a program called Logos or Logos. It's Greek for word, I believe. I use that program. I've checked out gotquestions. It's either .com or .org. I can't remember which one. But I've also checked out the thebibleproject.com. They've got some good information, just, and then some books and some study books that I've gone through, and then the study Bible that I use, some little tidbits in there is where I've gotten some of this information. So first of all, this was written by Matthew, of course. He wrote it primarily for the Jews. We understand that, just because it's written primarily for the Jews, don't take it as, it's not written for you, but it's written primarily for the Jews because they had so much knowledge of the Old Testament. Even in my eyes, they should have known that Jesus was the Messiah because of all the promises and all the prophecies that were fulfilled on him, but they missed it somehow. So Matthew is trying to make that point here. He records 20 miracles that Jesus did. I'm sure that there were more than just 20 miracles. However, only 3 of those miracles can be found in Matthew. The theme is that Jesus is the king. He's not a king that's going to come and he's going to set up his kingdom and be done with it. No, he is the king, and he is setting up his earthly kingdom. He's here to set up his heavenly kingdom. Matthew contains 53 direct Old Testament quotes. There's many more that are really indirect, but there's a lot that are, they are directly quoted from the Old Testament itself. This is why it's so important that we also know about the Old Testament. It's not something that just because it's Old Covenant that we should just throw out. No, if we didn't have the Old Testament, if the Old Testament was never around, we wouldn't even know, even as Gentiles, that Jesus was the Messiah. He is the Messiah. We would have not known these things. Jesus himself referenced the Old Testament, so that in itself means that the Old Testament is very important, as Matthew is trying to portray here. Scholars agree that this was definitely written before the temple's destruction in 70 AD. They want to guess that it's anywhere between 55 to mid-60s AD of when this was written. In some Bibles, they, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Gospels, Levi might be mentioned and Matthew might be mentioned, but people are given 2 different names, like Saul. He was an evil man towards the Christians. He did horrible things towards the Christians. And when he finally became a believer in Jesus, his name was changed to Paul. So Levi and Matthew are the same person. Levi is the tax collector. Matthew is the apostle. So it's the same person, just given different names. So the genealogy of Jesus Christ. I know as the first book of the Gospels, the first book of the New Testament, and the first chapter that we're looking in, you guys are probably like, oh my gosh, a genealogy. These things are so boring. Yes, they can be. I know they're tedious. I myself have multiple times skipped over them because I'm like, all right, I get it, whatever. But this is so important when we're coming down to the genealogy of Jesus Christ, as it is very important to see that line when they say the son of David, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those were part of the line of Jesus Christ. So it's very serious that we know these things. And I believe in Jewish culture, the genealogies were um, a way of establishing kinglyhood or royalty kind of things. So these are things that would have to be explained to us, but the Jewish culture, they would probably already understand this. So when we first dive into this, the first thing I want to know is there are 5 women that are mentioned in the genealogy, which is not typical. It's usually the males that are mentioned. Um, it's not that they're less equal, it's just that the man part of the genealogies are usually the more important part, because that's, if you're going back for royalty, your kings and the king's son and the king's son and all that and all this. So what we have Tamar, we have Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and of course Mary. In my Bible, the Holman Christian Standard Bible, it does not mention Bathsheba. It just says that she, the wife of Uriah, which I've looked at other versions of the Bible, and they do mention her name, so I thought maybe it was just a thing, um, but there are 5 women. I've also listed the verses or the chapters that you can find them in to get a little bit more in depth of what was this woman known for, um, just any other information. Most, obviously Mary, we don't hear a lot about except for in the Gospels. Um, so that's where you'll find her a lot. So Tamar, she was Judah's daughter-in-law. She was a Canaanite. I believe that in that situation, Judah had promised her, I think I've got the right person, yeah. Judah had promised her, a marriage with his youngest son, and I don't think I'm right on that. No, had to make sure. Had to make sure. So, but yes, she had promised, or he had promised her marriage to his younger son when he grew up. Well, she saw, she happened to be running around town doing whatever it was that she was doing, and she saw the younger son, and she still had not been contacted to marry him. So she did prostitute things, and Judah got caught up in it. So I'll leave that thing for you guys to read on your own. This is kind of to show, how most of these women were not, they were not top notch. They were not the best people in, if we were to look at, I mean, they're prostitutes, some people from, the Hittites, as we'll see here in just a little bit, they were probably not the best people. We have Rahab, who was that gal from Jericho just before they tore down the walls and all that stuff. She was also a prostitute. We have Ruth. She was a Moabite, so she was not an Israelite. If I look at my notes here, it says that the Moabites had a reputation for leading the Israelites away from their God, and they worshipped idols. So not a great person, but in the end, God had a plan for them. It's kind of why Matthew included these women, is that to say that God uses the most unlikeliest of people and women to do his work. Granted, he doesn't need these people, but he's saying, I can use whoever I choose. Got Bathsheba, who through unfortunate circumstances ended up marrying King David. She was a Hittite. She was Uriah's wife. David did some pretty bad things. He cheated, or he didn't cheat, but she was married to Uriah, and they did some naughty things. So, and then of course we have Mary, who was from Nazareth. Um, I want you guys to check out verse 16. Some translations in the Bible may say things a little bit different, but in my verse 16, it says that Jacob fathered Joseph, the husband of Mary, who gave birth to Jesus, who is called the Messiah. So Matthew's point in this is that, he's trying to say that Jesus does not have an earthly father, because in the Old Testament, it states that the Messiah will be born of a virgin. Well, if she's born of a virgin, then she cannot have sexual relations with a man. So obviously this baby has no earthly father, because his father is the God in heaven. So that was the only difference that I noticed. Everything else, it says that so-and-so fathered so-and-so, so-and-so fathered so-and-so. But in this, Joseph is still important. He's the husband of Mary, but she gave birth to Jesus without Joseph. Again, God uses all types of his people to fulfill his will. Joseph is important, but he's not Jesus's father. He's trying to make that aware that, if Jesus had an earthly father, then he would not be born of a virgin. So, the 14 generations, verses 17 through, looks like, just verse 17, it mentions multiple times 14 generations. Why is that? David's name in Hebrew is this. I don't know how to say it. I'm not even going to try to say it. But in Hebrew, that's what his name looks like. So, Hebrew letters, they also signify numbers. I'm not 100% on why that is. That's something, if you guys want to Google that, and if you're more curious about why that is, have at it. So the first and the last letter, they're the same. I believe that's a dalet. I hope I'm saying that right. But that Hebrew letter also equals 4. The middle letter, which is Vav, or I've heard Waw, W-A-W, but here it's V-A-V, that number equals 6. Well, if you do your math correctly, that equals 14. So, in order to do this, Matthew even purposely left out some people in the genealogy to make sure that the Jews would understand that David is the key in each section of these 14 generations. They say, that Jesus is the son of David, or he's from the line of David. Well, if David's pretty important, Matthew wants to make sure that you know about it, and he wants to make sure that the Jews know about it. Little link there in case you want to see where I got that cute little picture from. Joseph. So here's a little thing about probably what Joseph's thinking. If we go to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 20 through 24, if a man is discovered having sexual relations with another man's wife, both the man who had sex with the woman, that's a little odd there, but basically the man and the woman must die. You must purge the evil from Israel. If there is a young woman who is a virgin engaged to a man, and another man encounters her in the city, has sex with her, you must take the 2 of them out to the gate of that city and stone them to death. The young woman because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he has violated his neighbor's fiancée. You must purge the evil from you. So just by looking at this, I'm sure that Joseph is going, oh my goodness, how am these people in this town are going to try to stone my fiance. And, they're going to try, maybe they're going to try and find the guy that did it, even though there's no guy that did it. Maybe he even had a little doubt in his head. Was there really no other man, so these were the rules that they had, if um, basically sex outside the marriage or cheating on someone, this is kind of what their laws had said for them to do. If we look at Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 through 4, if a man marries a woman but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds something improper about her, she became pregnant without having sex with someone, he may write her a divorce certificate, hand it to her, and send her away from his house. So Joseph's probably thinking, it says that he even thinks, I will divorce her in secret so as not to embarrass her or stuff like that. If after leaving his house she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the second man hates her, writes her a divorce certificate, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house, or if he dies, the first husband who sent her away may not marry her again after she has been defiled, because that would be detestable to the Lord. So Joseph's probably going, holy cow, what have I got going on here? But, again, see what your thoughts are on Joseph. What do you kind of think of the things that he felt? Maybe if there's some guys watching this, how do you think you would feel if the woman you're supposed to marry all of a sudden is pregnant and you were nowhere around to cause this? So again, let's look at Mary's thoughts on this whole thing. Typically, marriages were arranged as a part of a Jewish custom. I'm not sure if they still do that today, but back then marriages were arranged. Women could be betrothed to a man as early as 12 years old. Okay, I was still watching cartoons at the age of 12, let alone thinking that my dad might have me married off to someone. So that's pretty young. At least how we think of today. Obviously things were different back then. Most historians and scholars, they agree that Mary might have been around 15 or 16 years old when she gave birth to Jesus. So she was still mid-teenager when all this happened. She had to have had so much going on inside of her head, even just thinking about what Joseph was thinking of, in the laws in Deuteronomy. It's like, I could be killed for this. So she had to have quite as much stress as he did. Then we have Joseph's visit with the angel. All I gotta say is thank God for the angel, because how things read to me in this passage is that all of a sudden, it says in verse 20, but after Joseph, he, had considered these things, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared to him in a dream. So, if he's dreaming and, or the angel has suddenly appeared to him, my kind of thoughts was he seriously stressing about this stuff so much that he got absolutely just wiped out? Dude was tired and, or did God somehow make him so tired that he needed to sleep? And it's because God's like, okay, you're stressing out a little bit too much about what I've already had set in motion, so you need to take a nap, and here we go. So the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in the dream. It said, Joseph, son of David. Again, very important that because, Joseph was Jewish. He understood that he is also from the line of David. So the angel's trying to, emphasize, give him a little nudge, be like, hey, you're part of the line of David here. So this has got to be a big deal. This is important. Don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife, because what has been conceived in her is by the Holy Spirit. Verse 21, She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus because he will save his people from their sins. Now all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. See, the virgin will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they will name him Emmanuel, which is translated, God is with us. So that verse is from, I believe it is somewhere here on, but there's more. Of course, there's more. So Joseph gets up from sleeping. He did as the Lord's angel had commanded him, and he married her, but he did not know her intimately until she gave birth to a son, and he named him Jesus. So, a couple of things to note here. How Joseph must have been tired. I assume that, because, when you just sit there and you stress about something, after you've stressed so long about it, you get wiped out. You're absolutely exhausted. So I think this was part of the plan, to make sure that, Joseph somehow, that he was just so tired, he needed to take a nap, make things all better. Naps they can be good for us. And in this case, it was extremely good for Joseph. So, and the angel tells Joseph exactly why this baby is to be born. He's reminding him of the prophecies in the past of this baby that is to be born of a virgin. So he's subtly reminding Joseph, okay, now is the time. So don't stress because, God has had this in his plan since day one, since before day one. The prophecy that's mentioned in this is from Isaiah 7:14. Around the times and everything, I believe that scholars, historians, whomever decides these things, they are guessing that from the time that Isaiah was written to the time that Matthew was written, they're guessing around 750 years this prophecy was prophesied before the birth of Jesus. So for 750 so years before the birth of Jesus, people have been aware that the baby, our Messiah, is going to be born of a virgin. So, and I'm sure that Joseph, being Jewish, doing all of their Jewish culture stuff with studying the laws and everything like that, I'm sure that Joseph knew about this. In Hebrew, Emmanuel is God with us, and in Greek, Jesus means Yahweh saves. So God is with us because he saves us. He saves us because he is with us. Maybe that's not necessarily the right way to put those two together, but it's the names in the past, they have always had, meanings to them. And so God is also reminding Joseph that, back in Isaiah, his name is Emmanuel, to be God is with us. Well, this baby that is to be born is going to be God who is with us. And he names him Jesus, and that means that Yahweh saves. So this is just in those two names there, we know why Jesus was sent, what his purpose was, and that he is God. He is God. God. So these were some of the other articles that I had checked out. There's a lot of information out there. I did not have enough time to grab everything. These are some things that I also want you guys to just check out on your own. That's Got Questions. It is .org. But they have a lot of, biblical questions that people ask, and then they research them and try and find out, if they can, the information from these. But these two I've seen these in churches before, so I believe they're valid. And again, some of the software that I used, But that is basically, there's not a whole lot to go about. I'm sure there are so much more that we could study in Matthew chapter 1. But this was all that I was able to find out. These were all the little nuggets that I was able uh, to find throughout my personal study with getting this ready for you. Next time, we'll be working on Matthew chapter 2. So if you guys are following along, please, read up on chapter 2, and I will try and get a downloaded sheet for you guys to do your own Bible study with someone else, with your families, however you would like to do that. If you would like to download it after watching the video and then watch the video and do the study again, um, feel free to do that. But I thank you guys so much for these. Please, again, subscribe, like, and we'll be going through the Gospels together. I don't know how long this is going to take, because I'm sure once we get to the parts where Jesus is speaking, there is so much that we could talk about in there, and we'll see how much time we have. So, but again, check back, and hopefully we'll get out a Matthew chapter 2 video for you guys and a little study sheet for you. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate it, and thanks for stopping in. Bye.